put those pickles back on the shelf. We're a civilized people. We don't put dill spears on our pies. Or do we? From French's fried onions to Spam the canned wonderham, here's what's topping our frozen pizza. We've seen pickled red onions show up on menus a lot lately, topping everything from hamburgers and tacos. They're ridiculously easy to make yourself, so if you whip up a batch and need to use some of them up, you can throw them on top of a frozen pizza. Of course, since they're soaked in vinegar, they have a strong flavor and don't work for every pie. We suggest trying pickled onions on pizzas with a white sauce, so frozen chicken or soppressata pizzas with white sauce are fair game. Pickled onions are also good on simple frozen pizzas that come with olive oil rather than a white or red sauce. Pickled onions also shine on barbecue chicken pizzas, especially if you find that the sauce is too sweet and could use a vinegar kick. If you have some capers in the cupboard, you don't have to wait for the next time you're in the mood for chicken piccata to open them. Since they come salted or pickled and already have a strong mustard-like flavor, you'll want to think about how they can affect the overall taste profile. You may also want to experiment with whether to add them before or after you bake the pie. Some people add them after baking as a final embellishment, but you might find yourself liking the texture of roasted capers even more.
So this is it.
You can combine capers with anchovies on a simple cheese pie and create a pizza Napoli. Capers also go well with mushrooms, caramelized onions, olives, chicken, and even sausage. There are a lot of canned meats out there, but Spam is one of the biggies that can be used as a pizza topping, and it goes especially well with pineapple. The brand even features a recipe for a Spam Hawaiian pizza. You could easily make one by adding canned Spam and canned pineapple to a frozen cheese or frozen veggie pizza. Try slicing the Spam thin so that the edges curl and it crisps like pepperoni during the baking process. Yes, adding Spam makes for a salty profile, which is part of what makes it contrast so well with the sweetness of pineapple. You'll want to be careful what other ingredients you add along with it. For example, adding salty canned olives or bacon might be a bit overwhelming. But speaking of pineapple, almost no topping divides pizza lovers like pineapple, but with 11% of Mashed fans calling it their favorite topping, it clearly has a following. If you're team pineapple, it's far easier to add fruit from a can than it is to cut open a fresh one. You will likely want to pay attention to the shape of pineapple cuts in the can, though. Pineapple tidbits are easier to distribute across the pizza. However, we've had fun adding full rings and placing other ingredients inside them so that the pizza becomes a work of art.
Pineapple and olive? Sweet and salty.
It's easy to start with a blank slate frozen cheese pizza and add other canned toppings that pair well with pineapple, like olives and jalapeños. Pineapple also goes with pretty much any meat pizza you pull out of your fridge, whether it's bacon, sausage, chicken, pepperoni, or even barbecue chicken. Fried onions aren't an ingredient you see on top of pizza very often, but think about how delicious they are on Western-style barbecue hamburgers because of the extra crunch factor, and you'll understand. If you've ever put fried onions on top of a green bean casserole, you get it. You can even add them after you're done baking to keep them as crispy as possible. We like the idea of adding fried onions as a topping for a frozen barbecue chicken or pork pizza, since fried onions work so well with barbecue. French's even has a recipe for adding fried onions with Italian sausage, bell peppers, and onions. If you like a little heat, you can put jalapeños on nearly any type of pie. However, you'll want to keep in mind that pickled jalapeños have a completely different taste than jalapeños that come in brine, so be sure to read the ingredient list. Vinegar pickled jalapeños can change the flavor beyond just adding a layer of heat. If you're concerned that the flavor or heat will overwhelm the pizza, you can just add jalapeños to a small part of the pizza to test it out. We especially like jalapeños on frozen pizzas with meat like ham, bacon, or salami, and adding them to pepperoni pizza is extremely popular. It's also common to pair them with pineapple. Jalapeños give barbecue chicken pizza an added kick. They're even tasty with anchovies. Canned spinach isn't the greatest spinach option out there, but it's possible to make it pizza-worthy with a little extra work. Remove the spinach, rinse it, squeeze all the water out of it, and then dry it with a paper towel. You can even add a teaspoon each of garlic powder and Italian seasoning before putting it on your pizza. There are a lot of pies that can go with spinach, but it tastes especially good with bacon and chicken. Pies with mushrooms, fresh tomatoes, garlic, artichokes, or onions also pair nicely with spinach, and you could consider adding it to a margarita or a Mediterranean pizza. Bruschetta spread doesn't just belong on toast. It's just as terrific as a topping for pizza. Even though opening up a jar from the store isn't as fresh as making your own from scratch, it's still pretty close. Simply bake your pizza as usual and top it with bruschetta after you're done. If you have some balsamic glaze or olive oil on hand, get fancy by drizzling some over the top.
You're eating 8-year-old tomatoes.
They're still good for another week.
Adding bruschetta to simple pies like cheese, chicken, or sausage pizza can really turn them into something far tastier than they would be on their own. Adding tapenade to a pizza that already features Italian meats is a great way to give it muffaletta sandwich vibes. With its Italian meats, cheese, and a spread of olives, olive oil, garlic, and Italian herbs, it's practically a pizza already. Of course, you can add the tapenade before baking, or wait to add it as a garnish. Tapenade pairs well with pepperoni, salami, and prosciutto, but it can make just as much of a splash on a red sauce pizza. Pickles on pizza is about to blow your mind. The most obvious frozen pizza for this scenario is a cheeseburger pizza. Even warm, baked pickles still have a crunch and add a little bit of magic. You can also turn an Italian meat combo into a Cuban sandwich pizza by adding pickles. Restaurants also add mustard and ketchup to cheeseburger pizzas and a mustard and mayo drizzle to Cuban pizzas to help them land closer to the sandwich version. There's also something to be said for just adding pickles to your plain frozen cheese pizza, because pickles are good on everything. Canned mushrooms are often superior to fresh mushrooms on frozen pizza. That's especially true if they're hitting the oven for a short cooking time, because canned mushrooms come pre-cooked. Plus, pre-sliced mushrooms cut down on prep time. Button mushrooms are common in cans, but you can also find porcini, shiitake, portobello, cremini, and truffles. Marinated mushrooms can also be an interesting choice because they can add extra layers of flavor. Mushrooms taste good on a variety of frozen pizzas, whether it's a cheese, veggie, or meat pie, and they're highly recommended paired with chicken, spinach, and artichokes. Oh, were you wondering about artichokes? Artichokes easily elevate just about anything from ordinary to gourmet, but pay attention to the ingredient list to determine if you're getting artichokes with salt brine or olive oil, as opposed to artichokes marinated in olive oil, vinegar, and spices. Sometimes, the vinegar and spices can overwhelm the flavor of a more delicate pizza.
I'm in love. I'm having a relationship with my pizza.
Artichokes work with fresh tomatoes, mozzarella, chicken, mushrooms, and basil. Definitely avoid pairing salty artichokes with other salty ingredients like bacon or olives. Of course, you can always rinse your artichokes to remove some of the saltiness. Pizza and olives both have Mediterranean roots, and while black olives are the most common as a topping, you can also go for kalamatas too. You just have to consider the flavor profile you're going for. Black olives tend to be mellow, green ones have a sharp tartness, and kalamatas have a richer flavor. Stuffed olives could also be a fun topping too. Blue cheese stuffed olive pizza? Sign us up. Black olives work with just about any pie. We suggest trying green olives with chicken, mushrooms, pepperoni, onions, pineapple, or garlic. Meanwhile, kalamatas will play well with Mediterranean-style flavors like feta, red onions, garlic, and basil. You can find a variety of canned peppers throughout your grocery store, including pimientos, roasted red peppers, chipotle peppers, whole green chilies, poblanos, and more. Just do yourself a favor and consult a Scoville heat scale before dumping an entire can of peppers on your only food for dinner. Bell peppers, sweet peppers, and poblanos will add more flavor than heat. Chipotles or serranos will provide a mild spiciness, while habaneros can be very hot.
This is very excellent. I never knew pizza was so good when it was hot.
Pickled peppers that come soaked in vinegar are going to have a stronger flavor, but they're perfect as the star on a cheese pie. Meanwhile, chipotle peppers pair best with something that fits with their smoky flavor profile, like chicken. Sun-dried tomatoes have a sharp flavor, and while they work fine with a red sauce, their zing really stands out against a white sauce or olive oil base. If your tomatoes come dried, you'll need to rehydrate them for 20 minutes before using them. But if they come in olive oil, check to see whether they feature other ingredients like rosemary or basil that could impact the flavor profile. Sun-dried tomatoes can provide a central flavor if you pair them with just a handful of other ingredients like spinach, mushrooms, chicken, or arugula. But don't sleep on adding them to a regular pepperoni pizza. It's not an ordinary pairing, but it works. Pesto combines flavors you often find in Italian cuisine, basil and Parmesan, but in a more potent form. But while pesto makes a good pizza sauce by itself, there's no rule that says that you can't add it to a red or white sauced pie to give it a more robust flavor. You can cook the pesto, but it tastes fresher if it's added after cooking instead.
This is the best meal I've ever had.
We especially like pesto with ingredients like chicken, olives, mushrooms, and fresh tomatoes. It can bring new life to a cheese or pepperoni pizza. Throw in some sun-dried tomatoes and you'll really be cooking. Some of the earliest Italian pizzas featured anchovies, so this topping is nothing new. Anchovies add salty, fruity, and umami flavor that can be difficult to replicate with other ingredients. They're also not as fishy as you might think, as evidenced by the lack of fishy flavor in Caesar salad dressing. It's best to pair anchovies with simple ingredients, so you don't end up with too many strong flavors competing with each other. You may also want to avoid piling up on other salty ingredients, since anchovies have plenty on their own. Some toppings that work well include garlic, tomatoes, pineapple, and sausage. Jarred garlic is one of those ingredients that you either love or hate. For instance, Anthony Bourdain wasn't exactly a fan. This preparation tastes different from fresh garlic because the preservatives sometimes give it a slightly acidic flavor. It can also give your pizza an added bite. If you have a plain cheese pizza, you could put a layer of garlic down on top and then build your pizza masterpiece from there, adding whatever toppings you like. So what flavors and toppings pair with garlic? We think the real question is, hello, what doesn't pair with garlic? As far as we're concerned, everything tastes better with some of that sweet garlic flavor, even if it's that time Domino's did a pizza with actual garlic bread on it. Hey, the more the merrier. Manja!